Hi, welcome to another episode of Rocky Mountain Ranch Research with me, Katie Paige. This is part two in a new series where I'm going through, I'll try and go through all the documents from the Rocky Mountain Ranch, formerly known as the Clearview Ranch. We are continuing with the multiple phenomenon on Kiowa, Colorado Ranch briefing document. And we are going to start off with a chronology of unusual events. And I'll try to get through items 1 through 5 today. So let's just jump right in here. It reads Appendix 1, Chronology of Unusual Events. Note, the following is a condensed transcript of the initial interview with the business partner, Jim, remember that's John Duke, and the wife, Barbara, remember that's Betty. And what's not really recognized is these two were dating at the time, not their real names. It says in the document here. The conversation has been somewhat condensed for clarity and easier reading, and reordered slightly to group descriptions of the sightings and unusual events at the beginning, leaving their speculations at the end. Some information from subsequent interviews with the photographer Roger and one of the frequent guests, Harry, I'm not sure who Harry is, has been inserted as if said by Jim, which is John Duke. Jim and Barbara have reviewed this entire manuscript and approved it for release in this anonymous form. So the first event that's recorded is number 1, the house hums. Jim, John Duke, the first unusual occurrence after we moved onto the ranch was a strange hum. We went out and disconnected all of the electrical wires, and at first we just thought it was an unusual occurrence. We had done the wiring ourselves, but the house hummed most particularly during a windstorm and for some time afterwards. I found out later that the ranch may be undermined with a large amount of coal mines. It was one of the largest coal areas in early Colorado history, and supposedly one of the largest is on our ranch. But we never found any traces of it at all, and I've really looked. I've walked every inch of that land. I still believe that there is some kind of pumps underground that pump the water out due to the barometric changes that rise the water level after a windstorm. It's interesting because I've never really looked into the coal mining history of the area, but I do know that there are two major aquifers that run under the ground on the ranch, the Denver and the Dawson. They come together right there on the property, which would say to me there might be caverns or voids or, where the water runs through there. So that's kind of interesting. And do some of these sounds that they're hearing have to do with the aquifers that run in underground under that ranch property? Perhaps also on this ranch property, it pings the charts of being highly magnetic. A lot of these high-strangeness areas are highly magnetic, and many have water features as well, springs, rivers, ponds, and aquifers. And that is most certainly the case here at the Rocky Mountain Ranch location. But I'm going to have to look into that coal mine aspect. I've never really researched that part, so that's something else to go ahead and look for there. So it says, and I've really looked. I've walked every inch of that land. I still believe that there are some kind of pumps underground. Oh, I read that. Sorry. It is almost invariably associated with the wind, and it is quite loud and distinct. And on the occasion that we have seen UFOs, the hum usually comes along, and it is quite similar. I don't believe aircraft would go up every time the wind came, but the house does hum almost with every major windstorm. I'll play you a tape of the hum that we have recorded. The house does this continuously during a windstorm and usually for an hour or two afterwards, depending on the length and intensity of the storm. It was humming the last time we were there, about 6 months ago, and I'm sure if you go there and could spend in excess of 8 hours there, you would hear it. The most practical time to hear it is about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, almost continuously. It is like an alarm clock. It does come on at other times during the day, but it is easier to hear it at night. There is a particular area, so they're saying it happens in the morning and at night. Okay. There is a particular area that it emanates from stronger, and this is where we put the microphone to record it. If you want to make a tape of this and can do anything with it to analyze it, feel free to do it, but I don't want to give up the tape. So Barbara is now speaking, which is Betty. It sounds almost like a turbine of some kind. The tape doesn't give a clear sound of it. It would come on sometimes louder and sometimes softer. Once, the first year at Christmas, it came on so loud we had difficulty talking and hearing each other. That is the only time it came on that loudly. It never again came on quite that loudly. My husband was the first one that heard it, which would be Jack. We had just finished moving the last few loads in, and Jim and I were still in town picking up some more things. John had, all these J names are confusing. John had gotten to the ranch first. The children were at a friend's. We're the friends. The minute we walked in, John said there was something wrong with the wiring, and there is this terrific hum in there. And we had put all the wiring in ourselves. We worked on the house for 3 months before we could even move in. There was dirt all over it because doors had blown open, and it was just terrible. Jim had put most of the wiring in, and we thought that maybe we had done something wrong. So we shut off all the breakers we could find, and that didn't stop it. So we went out and turned it off at the pole. There's a pole right behind the ranch house there. And it didn't stop it. So we went off at the pole, so there was no electricity at all coming in from the pole, which is in the center of the corral. True, it's still there. Okay, so there's that mysterious hum sound. And I find it curious and a little suspicious maybe that the new owners, Greg and Chris and Nicole, really didn't hear the hum, but when cameras showed up with Beyond Skinwalker, boom, there it was. So, and when I heard the hum on the show, I thought that sounds a little more high pitched than how I remember it, because I do recall hearing the hum when we were visiting the ranch, and it was a lower tone. It was almost a droning or moaning, like a well, I put it in the first video that I tried to recall it from my memory, so it's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's still going on or not, and I would hate to speculate that they faked anything. I have no evidence of that whatsoever. Just a weird coincidence. I don't know. Okay, part two. Bright trapezoidal shaped light. Jim, again, John Duke, I moved to the ranch in October of 1975. When we first moved out there, we had cattle on the ranch, and I was watching the cattle and remodeling. And on approximately October 16th, we have a dam on the northwest corner of the property, and the cattle were braying very heavily that night, and I went out to see what was disturbing them. We have a large coonhound that was watching the property, and the dog was extremely afraid of something. He was on the porch and wanted in, and I grabbed a gun and went out. The cattle range cattle do not usually come close to you. They usually give you a wide berth, where packing me so tight that I couldn't hardly get through the middle of the herd. I walked about halfway to the dam, and above the dam was a large lighted object. It was orange and trapezoidal shaped, and it looked much like the top of a lighthouse. I was going to see what it was, and I got about halfway there when I realized that the cattle were upset. The dog was upset, and that whatever it was, I didn't need to know. That was during the cattle mutilation days, and I had a small caliber rifle, and I decided to leave well enough alone. So I went back to the house and just filed it away as something interesting that happened and tried to forget it. Shortly after that, we had several cases of where the dog wouldn't go outside. The dog is not afraid of anything except, we found out later, he's afraid of bears. We have a mountain lion on the property which he aggresses very rapidly, so we couldn't figure out why the dog was afraid. That reminds me of Greg, Chris, and Nicole's dog that would not go to the landing site.
Come on, Oscar. We already have him getting a little nervous coming up here.
What's going on?
He doesn't like coming up this hill.
Oh, look at him.
He has his tail down. Come on, Oscar.
That's really interesting.
He does not want to come.
He does not. Look at that.
Come on, it's okay. he just will not come up here.
He just totally slipped out of his own leash. He's gone.
Wow.
Yeah, I never understood it, but it's just this area that you're taking us to. He doesn't want to go there.
Really? Isn't that something?
Wow.
Now, they do have 3 dogs on that property. The other 2 seem kind of like whatever, but the one dog must be highly sensitive and tuned in, will not go up to that landing site. He will just not. So I find that kind of interesting. That's around the same area. They're talking about the pond and the dam right there. It's the same location that their coonhound wouldn't go to all those years earlier. So kind of an interesting parallel to what's happening now. Number 3, paralysis. Jim, John Duke again. Shortly after that, Barbara, Betty, moved out there, I think, and John was commuting back and forth to his office. That's Jack, the one my mom was dating. And he wasn't there a good part of the time. I like that line because they don't say it there, but that's because he was living with us during the week, so he wasn't there a good part of the time. They don't make that clear. That was kind of a hush-hush secret, but I find that interesting. It states it right there. We didn't have the heat on very adequately, and it turned cold, and we had electric heaters set up all over the place using the electricity to heat us. We were all in one bedroom in the back watching TV. There were 3 of us. Steve, a friend. Did you guys hear that? That was weird. Okay. Hello. Um, okay. 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 We were all in one bedroom in the back watching TV. There were 3 of us, Steve, a friend from Boston, and Barbara and I. Well, I found that they had a large reward for the cattle mutilators. That's true. That it went from like 5,000 to 10,000, which back in the mid 70s, $10,000 was quite a bit. So they did have the cattle associations put out a reward to try to find the perpetrators of these animal mutilations back in the day. That night, I was going out tracking them. I had a large 12-gauge shotgun, and I fancied myself the great hunter, and I was going to go catch the cattle mutilators. Well, I mean, that's true. Back in those days, you did not go up to somebody's ranch or house or drive on their property, especially at night, because you're liable to get shot, because everybody out there was on high alert. No doubt about it. Well, I had laid down on the couch and I was unable to get up. It was like paralysis, like I was drugged. It was about 8:30 at night. Now, Barbara, Betty, you tell what happened to you. So now this is Barbara, Betty. I got to stop the air quotes. I'm sorry. No more air quotes. Okay. We were watching TV, Steve and I, in the bedroom that was fixed up as a sitting room. Without any outside stimulus that I know of, my blood pressure and my heartbeat went up. I do have high blood pressure problems. I saw spots and had difficulty breathing and thought I was having a heart attack. Steve panicked, and I was trying to get Jim awake on the couch because I really thought that I was that's what was happening. I have a perceptual problem with directions, so I do not know north, south, east, or west, but all of a sudden I knew exactly where I was, a feeling I have never had before and have never had since then. That's kind of interesting. My thinking pattern felt different. I don't think logically. That's opposite of me, I guess. I'm a very emotional person, and things that popped into my mind were just like pearls on a string and went right down to the end. Huh, that's an interesting description. I remember things that I had completely forgotten, and that frightened me. And by that time, I was screaming, and Jim came to from whatever his problem was. He couldn't seem to talk, and I was trying to tell him what had happened. And while I was getting it all out, the only thing I wanted to do was leave. Now, you have to realize that I love that place, and some part of me still does. I had no place that I wanted to go, but my immediate feeling was to get out. Get in that car and go anywhere. And Jim got me calmed down, and Steve was in a panic. And shortly after that, John showed up. That would be Jack, which is kind of interesting because it sounds like this is happening in the evening. Jim then started telling him what had happened, and when Jim started telling him, then I was able to talk about it. That was the first strange thing that happened to me, something like it had never happened to me before in my life. I have never lost control, even drinking. I watch very carefully what I drink because I might do something wrong and someone might laugh. I was upset for days. And it goes on. So Jim states, I'm a late night owl and I couldn't conceive of myself going to sleep at 8:30 and not being able to get up. But again, we had nothing to relate it to as being an eerie experience except as something strange happening and just forget it. Okay, so number 4. So 2 more to go. First mutilation. Jim, again John Duke. Shortly after that, the oldest boy, Joe, had his friends out from Denver. They were out going through the woods. This was a Sunday morning, and they had found our first mutilated cow about 200 yards from the house up over the hill. They came back in a panic. They were both 16 years old, and it was snowing heavily, and we decided the first thing to do was get into town and get the law officer. The boys were pretty upset, and we took some time to talk to them because they felt that something was following them to get them. I assumed it was a natural paranoia. I know that feeling very well. It's a so uneasy feeling of being watched, especially from the tree line, and I'm sure that's what they were experiencing right there. We went out and I followed the route, and we found huge footprints that had followed them all the way from the cow to the horse barn, and the footprints were even in the soft manure inside the horse barn. They were, I guess, 18 inches. I didn't measure them, but they were quite large, what I guess you could call a Bigfoot footprint. Then immediately, which reminds me of what we saw on season 1, out there in that blanket of snow, these bipedal large prints. Again, we didn't measure them. It was blizzarding hard, but they were large and it was very strange. Then immediately I decided to go to the law officer, which was probably Bill Law, but they don't say that in here. I went to the nearest phone and called the law officer and told him I wanted him out right away. He said he would be out next Wednesday. Seems like there were so many happening, maybe he just couldn't get there quickly. I explained the footprints. He said, well, he couldn't make it, but there was a bad snowstorm and he didn't show up the next Wednesday. When we went out the next day, all the footprints in the snow had been removed, even our own footprints. Now that's weird. Okay, I'm assuming they just got covered up with snow. All of them were just gone. That was pretty unsettling, and I was pretty angry with the law officer at the time. The mutilation was discovered early Sunday morning. The boys came back about 9 a.m. and the footprints were there all day Sunday, but Monday morning they were all gone. The law officer didn't show up, which angered me. Wednesday, when he was supposed to show up, he still didn't show up, and we still had a mutilated cow. The udders were removed surgically. The sac under the udders was perforated. One eye was missing. One ear was missing. And that was it. There was no blood. All the blood had been removed. And there was no tracks in the snow around the cow. It was just there mutilated. John states that the rectum was also removed. Typical, classic description of a true animal mutilation. Barbara, Betty states, there was some funny looking markings in the snow, and we found out later they were caused by owls. We found that it took 2 weeks after a mutilation before any of the wild animals would touch it. Again, another classic sign. Okay, so here's number 5, and this will be the end for this episode. So 5, second mutilation. Jim, again John Duke, 14 days after the first mutilation, a friend of ours from California, a forest ranger, stopped to visit. We went out walking and were showing the ranch to him and other friends, including a photographer, Roger, who had been hired from Denver to take pictures of the mutilated cow. I wish I knew who this guy was. If you ever see this, reach out to me. We found our second, those pictures have to be somewhere. That's what's frustrating to me. Anyway, okay. We found our second mutilation, a bull, as we were walking over the property, and the bull wasn't ours. That's kind of crazy, too. Subsequently, I went into town and called the law officer. He said he would like to talk to me, so we met at a restaurant in town. There's only like two, a pizza place and one other little cafe that was there. It's still there to this day. I think the name's changed, obviously. I asked him why I hadn't heard from him and why he wasn't trying to solve this. He explained to me that they knew what the mutilations were and they had known for some time. They only report 1 out of 4. If that's true, then hundreds turns into thousands. I mean, wow. And in this county alone, there had been over 400 reports by that time. It was being done by extraterrestrials, and they had spoken to the FBI about it. I told him that I couldn't believe it. I said that I could believe that an intelligent race could travel across space, but to do some of the things that they had done to the cow and bull stretched my imagination a little too far. I told him that if he couldn't solve the crime, at least don't blame it on something like that. I made an enemy of the man, and I frankly didn't care because we had lost 2 cattle. So here you're feeling the tensions between John Duke and Betty and the law officers, and you can kind of get a sense of the panic that the town was feeling. This is a small town again, population around 200 at the time. These hundreds of mutilations are occurring to horse and cow and dog and other animals. There was, this reward. People were arming themselves. So you kind of get a sense of almost to the point of hysteria at some point that was going on. Linda Moulton Howe's out there trying to investigate. Eventually, Colorado Bureau of Investigations gets involved, and so on and so forth. So what we got out of this episode today is look into the coal mines, look into what could be out there, and that's something I will definitely check into and report back to you all on that. So thanks again, and next time we will get through hopefully 6 through, let's say 6 through 8. So enjoy. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.